All right, guys, I was going to do this video earlier, but here in the state of Virginia, where we've had the summer heat carry over into the autumn, there's been like this statewide ban, much like the dark beginning of the Dark Knight Returns with the heat. They had a burn ban. It was burn ban. It was so bad. And then all of a sudden I see the Joker movie. It cools off and this rain comes in and knocked me out like an 80-year-old man on a Sunday afternoon in this chair right behind me. So I woke up. I'm like, we're going to talk about the Killing Joke. No, wait, the Joker movie. But before we get there, there's a little bit of history of this for me about how big this movie became. Hey, what's up, guys? The movie is a hit, right? Even with this sabotage that went on with it, where they were, groups were trying to scare people into thinking that there were going to be guns and shootouts, and people inspired by the movie to wipe people out of theaters. What's going on, guys? Everybody's popping up. This is awesome. Yeah. So the movie, I think it made something like 93 million. Hey, Creature's here. We'll just let everybody kind of walk in here, then I'll get started again. The movie made $93 million domestically. That means in this country. And I think it made something like worldwide $45 million, $143 million. I don't know, man, but it was a huge hit. No, $245 million is what I think it was, right? That nap killed me, man. So basically, this goes to show that all these people that are online that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, it just sort of shows that they're nothing. The only place they're relevant is online, because the movie made more money worldwide than in this country and stuff, right? Which is fantastic, right? But the thing about it is that it's the karma that hit for the Joker, right? If we go back to March of 2015, you might remember this cover. It was in color. It's the thumbnail to this video. But this was a Batgirl variant cover that was hearkening back to the Killing Joke. And this was our first real exposure to the infection in the comic book industry. Yeah, this fiasco. And I sort of did a video. My whole thing was about censorship, right? I had no idea that there were people out there refer to themselves as SJWs, and I think it's like morphed over the years into cancel culture. But I did a petition in Entertainment Weekly online, which you can Google this right here. They ended up quoting me, but not giving me credit in here about my petition. Now, I retired my petition because I wasn't the only one that started a petition. And maybe a hair after I started mine, or maybe around the same time, this other petition really took off. They had more exposure online. They knew what they were doing to get their message out. It wasn't a big deal. They contacted me. We ended up talking to each other, and I sent everybody that signed my petition to that one and retired it. Which wasn't a big deal. More capable hands is what it came down to. But in this, what they quoted me on concerning the Joker cover was, I said, due to a small majority of easily offended people who have taken the role of a collective watchdog group, DC has agreed to pull a Batgirl Joker variant cover at the artist's request. This is not about the cover, but about the importance of not allowing a minority to control the choices of the majority. It's about irrational censorship. It's about not allowing art to be made into something evil. And the person who wrote this article said there's a lot to unpack there, right? It's the exact same thing with what they try to do with this Joker movie. And I think it's amazing that 4.5 years later, the karma hit. That's the title of this video. That it's nonsense. And Creature here says, yes, I remember this nonsense. It was nonsense. And now the Joker has broke records after record after record for movies released in October. This thing even beat Venom. Venom held the record for biggest opening in October for a whole year and stuff. And the Joker comes out. And the other thing about it is that it's a quality movie also. This movie is a piece of art. What was it? Martin Scorsese. I've been seeing headlines saying that Martin Scorsese said these Marvel movies weren't cinema; they were like amusement parks and stuff. And I'm sort of like, well, duh, yeah, they're a great time, they're fun, they have a little bit of depth here and there and stuff like that. But you take any of the Marvel movies and put them up beside of like Taxi Driver or Outsiders or any kind of thing, and it's an art film. I've always felt that when it comes to genre of movies, there should be certain kind of critics for each that understands each genre. You can't put all cinema over under an umbrella. It's just not. There's people who should be experts in comedy, experts in horror, different experts in the genre of superhero movies. There even should be experts in westerns and war movies and stuff, right? It's the theme of the movie. But that's where the Joker kind of transcends this Joaquin Phoenix's character that he did in this. It was amazing because hey, what's up, guys? Hi, everybody. Well, we got all kinds of people coming in here. This is fantastic. So I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but we're getting to it, and there's going to be spoilers as I can remember, because this is a movie it has some very subtle things in it that would require you to see it a couple of times. You can watch the movie all the way through the first time, enjoy it for what it is. It's amazing. There's a lot of quiet moments in there where the movie breathes. There's a lot of the cameras on Joaquin Phoenix a whole lot to where you can see what he's doing with the character and get to know him. You kind of get in the mindset and you're observing him and you realize that, this is a dude that is crazy, and that's what's amazing about the movie. But I think it's going to take multiple viewings, because the magic of the movie is that where we're seeing this movie, it gives you clues that what you're seeing may or may not be real in certain parts of the movie, right? He has hallucinations or an active imagination. It's very vivid. The character Arthur that's in there, I think his last name was Flick in the movie, but it's an unreliable narrator. This is a trick that goes back to like Edgar Allan Poe did this with some of the people telling his stories and stuff. The whole fact is, when you watch the movie, is this what's really happening? Or are we still seeing things from the viewpoint of a madman? Okay, that's what's really great about it. Hey, what's up? Thuggy1 is out there. I have not heard from Thuggy in forever. Creature is out there. I trust very few critics. All of them are people like us that have YouTube channels. Right. Paulo Costa is here. Awesome. Was it still like midnight for you around there? American Psycho does it too. American Psycho is American. I'm trying to think what that Kevin Costner movie is. Mr. Something. I can't believe I'm going blank on this because I watch it regularly. But I thought American Psycho was going to be, a movie about a serial killer and you're watching him. And it wasn't until he was running naked through a hallway wearing a pair of brand new Nikes in the 80s and he drops a chainsaw down some steps. The steps kind of spiraled and he killed somebody with the chainsaw that I realized this was a dark comedy. Mr. Brooks, I think that's the Kevin Costner movie. Is that it? I don't know. But the Kevin Costner ended up making the movie I thought American Psycho was going to be. So the Joker movie is actually a film. I about fell down when I found out this was the guy that directed like The Hangover, right? And he had some reasons that he said he left comedy, and that's because of the cancel culture that's out there and stuff, right? And I totally get where he's coming from. But the Joker, the things that happen in the Joker is that, first of all, it's a war of the classes. Now, that's what I've always said over the last few years when we've had the SJWs and doing what they do and whatever they call themselves now and stuff like that. I was all, they want to label people and look at them at face value and give them labels and stuff. And that's where we get into race, color, sexual orientation, and they give themselves labels about what they are and their pronouns and stuff like that. But when you get into the Joker, it really kind of shows that socioeconomic economic situations is what really divides people, right? They show the Waynes, Thomas Wayne in this, right? This is before there's a Batman. The movie takes place in 1981, if you can put it together with what they did at a movie theater at the end of the movie, not to skip around and stuff, right? So it shows the Joker, and he's, Gotham is dirty and nasty, a lot like what you hear about cities in today's world, like LA and Baltimore and stuff. Those cities where people are actually crapping on the streets and stuff. And we have these third world diseases coming back, like leprosy and bubonic plague and stuff. So I kind of think that was more of a synchronicity, sort of a kismet for these things to start making the news, considering they made the movie probably about a year ago, months ago. I remember seeing a clip of Joaquin Phoenix dressed as Joker running through the streets, getting chased by two cops that made it in the movie. So that's one of the magics about this movie. It really tapped the pulse of what's going on today, and I don't think that was by design. The totality of it, right? So we see Gotham and the poor and stuff, and you see Thomas Wayne on there, the elite rich man, saying, "I can save this city." You know what I mean? And the people who are rich and stuff like that really come off very bad in this, right? Thomas Wayne and the Waynes and stuff didn't really get demonized, because they sort of got redeemed there at the end when you found out the big lie. And I'll get into that. The director said he named him Fleck to make him sound small and insignificant, and it worked. It's perfect. That's what I mean. There's a lot of thought that went into the storytelling. You watch the movie, it feels very straightforward and very quiet until about the last 20, 25 minutes. Then the movie just kind of comes together and you see all these things going on, right? But, when we start out, we see a guy dressed as the clown, and there's an out of business, has an out of business sign, and he's on all these bright colors, dressed like a clown in this very dirty, nasty street where there's this garbage strike going on. And he's just sitting there doing his thing, and he gets attacked, maybe, after you see that he has hallucinations and stuff. He gets mugged, and they steal a sign, and he chases them, and then they beat the crap out of him and hit him with the sign. He ends up getting fired. You find out that he lives with his mother, and you can tell his mother's not right. He loses his job. There's people struggling left and right. And there's people being very mean to him no matter what. And he has to have a card. He starts laughing at inappropriate times. And he has a card that he gives out and asks for it back that says, please ignore my laughter. I have a condition, flip over. My laughter does not reflect my emotions of how I'm really feeling about things. Please give the card back. And the genius of that is that due to these social economic things that are going on, he goes to see a counselor once a week who could give a crap. A social worker could give a crap, could not care less. And she's just going through the motions, and he calls her out on it eventually, but he can't get his medicines because they're closing it down due to funding. Meanwhile, he watches a version of The Tonight Show with Robert De Niro that calls back to a movie that Robert De Niro made with Jerry Lewis back in the early 80s and stuff, right? Where he ends up making it on Tonight Show. Which was very smart casting, very smart inside details if you're a movie buff, right? So that's what I mean. It's a very smart movie, and there's other movies you can kind of watch where you get where they're coming from. You feel a little Taxi Driver in there. You feel a little, I think it was The Comedian or whatever that movie was with De Niro and Jerry Lewis and stuff. And you feel a little of this, a little of that. But it doesn't rip off those movies. It gives it a texture, and it makes it a period piece that is just feels like you're really there. Meanwhile, through the whole thing, it's not so much that the Joker, Arthur Fleck, there is sympathetic. It's just that you could listen to Talking Heads, Psycho Killer, and there's little lines in there where I'm sort of like, were they listening to this song when they wrote this character? Because there's a line in the song that says, "I don't like people when they're not polite," and everybody's just mean and hateful and suspicious and stuff, right? Now you got to understand that's where we come into the unreliable narrator, if you will, right? Are people just rude and mean and stuff, or is this crazy man? Because when people have personality disorders, or we see things that don't feel right, we do have the bells and whistles inside of us that tells us to get away from them, right? So that's where if you watch the movie straightforward, you're like, what an awful world. People are just awful. Or are we seeing it through his hallucinations? Okay. Because there's a slim part there. There's a part there just for a second that tells us he ends up in the asylum, or he is in the asylum of Arkham Asylum, because he's bashing his head against a piece of window in a padded room. And it looked like to me he was in a straitjacket. So that's what I mean. There's little clues you when you watch this movie again. If you haven't seen it for the first time and you watch it again, think about that. It shows he is in Arkham for a minute. Kind of reminds me of going back to Jacob's Ladder, where there's little clues there that we weren't seeing what we thought we were seeing. Kind of goes back to the Red Badge of Courage, where we find out this whole story is imagination, is the guy's imagination of escaping from being hung. Is that what's going on here? It doesn't really tell you there. Funny enough, the media hysteria surrounding the movie made for the perfect conditions to make the movie's points of apathy and social clash more poignant. That's Murdoch the Pooch. That's where it gets smart. It does touch on that also. It really does. It shows that it has consequences. It shows that when you leave people fighting for the scraps of anything, they will go nuts and they will eventually rise up. And it touched on anti-faith. That's all there is to it. There's no doubt in my mind. It kind of sort of touched on that a little bit. I also felt a little Watchmen in there a little bit. There was a moment there where at the end of the movie where the Joker is pulled out of the car and held up by the crowds wearing the clown mask and stuff. I was actually waiting for the comedian to drop down and start shooting at him, with his gas gun or whatever. King of Comedy. Yes, that's the movie. King of Comedy, not the comedian. Occurrence at Al. I'm so glad you guys are out there. Apparently, I'm just eating this up. This freaking nap messed me up. Red Badge of Courage. It was an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Thank you, Thuggy. Red Badge of Courage popped in my head because I'm unpacking stuff, and I found that book, The Red Badge of Courage, man. Oh, God, I'm eating this up. It's live. I'm glad you guys are here. We'll redeem ourselves, myself here, right? So the movie moves on to where Arthur's world is made up of his mother, who you can tell is just kind of crazy. His medication and always sort of being apologetic. And this is where the performance of Volcane is just amazing because it's a lot of body language. It's a lot of body language and him doing weird stuff from our point of view when he's by himself, like his little dances that he does, right? His little dances that are just sort of bizarre and strange. And the laugh that Volcane has, you hear the Joker, you hear the foreshadowing of the Joker and all these the laugh that he does when he's just going on about his business and stuff, or things are happening around him and he's just laughing hysterically, like it's bone chilling in certain parts, right? But at the beat of it, he thinks his mother has told him that he is here to put smiles on the world and to be something more. We also come to find out that his mother had a episode to where she was writing a letter to Thomas Wayne, sort of asking for money, and he opened the letter and read it without her permission, and she was trying to say that Thomas Wayne was his father. And she said, well, I signed a bunch of papers. That's why I've never been able to say anything about it. And now we're getting into the mythos here, into the Bat world, if you will, with Batman and everything like that. We're starting to touch on a few things. So there's something happened with the Joker and Bruce and Thomas coming. You just don't know what it's going to be. And it was just fantastic. And we actually got to see it in the trailer. But so now Arthur, with his world starting to fall apart and he's starting to be off of his meds and things are going on, he decides to go visit the Wayne Manor, and he's going to go, hi, I'm your son, to Thomas Wayne. And it turns out that he ends up seeing Bruce playing in the yard, and he puts on the clown nose and he's trying to make Bruce smile. And he gets around to the gate and he actually puts his hands on Bruce Wayne, the child, and stretches his face out trying to make him smile, which is just bizarre and crazy, number one. But again, unreliable narrator. We've seen him thinking, I'm just here to put smiles on people's faces. Yet there's this weird stranger sitting here touching a child and Bruce is letting him. And then if you're into comics or the movies or living under a rock, we are now seeing the first time the Joker and Batman met, and this whole thing is making him smile. And this is where he gets told that he finds out that his mother was delusional. She worked for Thomas Wayne, and it actually turns out that they had to get rid of her because she was obsessed with him. Right. And apparently this wasn't the first person she was obsessed with. Right. And it was just I'm sitting there watching this and I'm like, that's kind of where the movie popped for me a little bit. I'm like, oh, my God, this is getting very, very strange. we're seeing historical moments and destinies intertwining, without even a lot of people realizing it, I think, right? So he has to deal with that fact. And then he had a little episode on a subway where we had three frat boys, three rich kids or something like that, kind of drunk, and they're harassing a girl to the point on the subway. It's just the three of them, a woman, and Arthur Fleck, who had just gotten fired over having a gun at a children's hospital. And he's sitting there and he's kind of watching this. The girl runs and he starts doing that hysterical laughing again. And the three guys come down on him and they start singing folk songs to him about clowns. Where are the clowns and stuff, right? I hear Judy Collins when I, hear that song. And he ends up actually defending himself with a gun that he got. But he runs off. The cops start investigating, and this ends up putting his mother in the hospital. In the middle of this, he starts having a fantasy of a girl who gave him a little bit of attention in a hallway. And we don't know it's a fantasy, but he goes straight to her door after shooting those three guys, these three rich people. He goes in there and it shows him like just knocking on her door, grabbing her and making out. And he's in a relationship, which turns out to be completely in his head. It does a very good job of having you sort of feel for him at that point, but they take that away when you see him after his mother dies, that he just walks into her apartment and sits down, and she just knows he's the creepy guy down the street. And he just sits there, and you're just all of a sudden, you've turned against him a little bit. You're just sort of like, first you're like, this is messed up. And then you start getting worried about the woman and her little girl because this guy's losing it. So that's what I mean. I can just kind of spit out all these things and jump around, but all these things come together, and the movie is put together in a way to where it's just one layer peeling back after the other. And where most of it's a very quiet, straightforward movie. You can feel a little momentum building up to something, but you just don't know where it's coming or where it's coming from. And you're dealing with the idea of like, I don't know what's real here and stuff, right? So the more and more he comes off his meds, we start finding out that he said he doesn't have a condition. It's not him. He's starting to accept that everybody in the world around him have been trying to make him or tell him something or sedate him or anything, keep him from being who he is. The more he finds out, the more, he finds out that his mom is crazy. His mom's lied to him. His mom is delusional. He finds out truths about, his past, that he's been lied to. Everybody has lied to him, or they have beat him up, or they've gotten rid of him and stuff. It gets very, very deep into his, you're wondering is what's starting to happen there. And of course, he's off his meds. Yet at the same time, by letting go of all this past and not letting people tell him that he's crazy, he ends up becoming the Joker. That's what gets it. He's becoming the Joker. He starts getting this world view, his own idea of right and wrong. And it goes back to, like I said, the social economic classes and stuff. I saw the film Thursday. My friends in their late 20s and early 30s have never read The Killing Joke nor seen the 70s film the movie was an homage to. That's why it was disturbingly new to them. Yeah, and it is a disturbing movie. In my opinion and stuff. So there were things, I'll just kind of stop here before I go to the crescendo of what the movie became, the big climax and stuff, right? But there were little things I saw that harkened, like I said, to other movies and other Joker points. But the one that got me is after his appearance on The Tonight Show, whatever it was called, in Gotham with Robert De Niro, he's in a cop car. And I swear I started hearing the Iggy Pop song Passenger, I Ride Under Glass and stuff. It has him in the back of the cop car, and he's just looking out the streets, and you see in the reflection of the window, the fires that people are setting, and they've just blown up and they've taken over the streets, and everybody's just, taking out their frustration, and everything like that of what the Joker has started. And it reminded me of Heath Ledger hanging his head out as the Joker when he had stolen the cop car in his movie as the Joker. And it was just amazing how that kind of harkened back. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. It was almost a mirror image of those two scenes with Heath Ledger with his head out the window free, letting the wind go in his hair, and you had the Joker just sort of looking at everything with his head against a window. I feel like that was something. Another part is a little bit after that is when there was a wreck. Another car hit the cop car that the Joker was in, and all these people came out and got around the car, and they all pulled the Joker out, and they lifted him up, and they were passing his body around and stuff. It reminded me of Spider-Man, the second movie with Doc Ock, where Spider-Man saved everybody on the subway, and he ended up passing out, and they all lifted him up and took him back. There was so many little Easter eggs like that in there that it definitely I definitely have to have a second viewing of it to probably pick up on all of them, because again, with that unreliable narrator, it makes me wonder, is that an Easter egg or not? That's the magic of this movie. You have a little bit, there's little clues in there to let you know if what you're seeing is real or a hallucination. And they set that up for the end. So basically, one of the things that Arthur Fleck was doing is that he tried to study his craft of being a comedian. It showed him going to this comedy club, and he would be sitting there writing notes on what jokes were funny and what worked and how the crowd acted and stuff. He also had journals that kind of let you know that the Joker was trying to come through him even after being heavily medicated and things. When you saw his journals that he did, these journals were part of the therapy he had. And you can see these crazy drawings and clippings he did of magazines. And he had there was this one quote that kept showing was, "I hope my death makes more sense, CENTS, as in money, than my life." They kept showing that, right? So to me, that was showing that, setting up that he is just the Joker. Outside of that, it still is going to come out. The laughter was the Joker really trying to come out. The medications and people telling him and beating him and stuff like that. It also talked about the childhood trauma that he had, where they found him tied to a radiator, and one of his mom's boyfriends that they allude beat the crap out of him, and he was malnourished and stuff, right? So there was a lot of things that got in there, and it wasn't trying to make us sympathetic for us. It was kind of showing why he was crazy, where some of this could have come from, and that he never stood a chance. I mean, he never stood a chance of being anything else. Because where he's the narrator, the unreliable narrator, and he's the Joker, was he tied to the radiator for abuse, or was this boyfriend trying to keep this little kid from killing him? You see what I'm saying? If you start really thinking about it, we got that little story out of context. We didn't get to read the file that Arthur Fleck was reading from Arkham Asylum. You know what I mean? It was now I started thinking immediately, like, what did this kid do to have them tie him to the radiator? Because he's a freaking killer. I think the film is purposely ambiguous because it wants us to talk about it for years. Phoenix even said it just want to just watch it for what you want it to be. I'm down with that. That's fantastic. It works. It works. It has me thinking. I want to be watching this movie and thinking about it every now and then. That's the kind of stuff I like. I like the things where you can actually have a conversation about, or kind of pick it apart, or see what else they're saying and stuff. Those become the great cult movies, the cult hits and stuff, the ones that live on. So it was during him studying how to become a comedian that he took this journal, and he ended up doing a stand-up. And I'm not quite sure how it got recorded, because this movie lets you know towards the end. I'll tell you where I saw, how I figured out what year the movie was. It takes place in 1981, but somehow film of him doing his stand-up, we don't get to see the whole thing. We get to see him be nervous. We get to see him do his bone-chilling laughter and stuff, laughing when it's not funny. It was amazing. And him just reading out of his journal and stuff, he's letting the Joker out a little bit. You kind of see people laughing, but again, unreliable narrator. But this lands on Robert De Niro's character getting a hold of the clip, and he showed it on their Tonight Show, whatever it was called, right? And then they asked him to be on. And by the time they ask him to be on, we've got the cops investigating Arthur Fleck. We got people calling the killer who killed the three rich guys on the subway more of a folk hero. It's inspired people, or maybe not, to speak up, to fight back, talk about the rich versus the poor. He's off his meds. He's now killing people, and he feels like he's justified. He feels like everybody's getting what they deserve. And then he ends up on the show, and he's alluded to letting you think that he's going to do the big punchline where he kills himself on live TV. And he comes out after all the weird dancing and things that he does. He paints his face as the Joker. He puts on his purple costume, and then all of a sudden the body language of Joe Kane has this guy confident. He looks like a completely different man walking through the hallway and going down the steps until the cops yell at him. You know, he's doing the big dance that you saw in the trailer and stuff down the steps and stuff, and the music's in his head. And then all of a sudden he just turns into Arthur Fleck again when the police show up and the two cops start chasing him. And it's amazing how he gets away, because he got away because of what he's inspired. All of these clowns, people wearing clowns masks and things like that, and hating the cops and the rich people, and you know, they're kind of wanting anarchy a little bit. And what he set up is why he was able to escape. So he gets to the Tonight Show, and he's keeping it together pretty well. And he asked to be introduced as the Joker, and Robert De Niro's going for it. Now, the people one of the guys that works for Robert De Niro, some stagehand or something, thinks this is the stupidest thing ever and doesn't think he should be there. And he's like, whatever. So all of a sudden, you know, the Joker comes out, and all of a sudden he gets to do his dance on live TV. And it makes perfect sense. He is the Joker. He had already watched somebody come out on the Tonight Show and how they came out with a little dance. He thought he was going to copy it, but what he did was much more honest or dramatic and fun. And he sits down, and we get a moment. This is what I'm talking about, the clues in the movie. He sits there, and there's a quiet moment, and he looks around, and he says, "This is exactly how I had imagined it," which lets you know that this is real, not his imagination. He's already imagined it, and now he's amazed on how that fantasy, how he imagined it, and reality have finally hit a point where it's all the same. And he does this big speech. The pacing of that scene and the acting of Joaquin there is just amazing, because it builds a tension. There's a little bit of a cringiness, and you start feeling nervous. And he finally says, you know, talking to the audience, you know, you people passed me by every day and never looked at me. And then I finally do something. He admits to killing the three guys on the subway, and he feels like you're going to get exactly what you deserve. And he turns around on live TV. He shoots the host, Robert De Niro. It was awesome. What we got here? Ambiguous, and I cannot talk tonight, can work to create a classic. The end of The Killing Joke is a good example. Exactly. You are correct, Stucky. I saw something in the movie that was like an Easter egg to The Killing Joke. I wish I could remember. I remember him standing out on the street at one point, and behind him, you could see a Ferris wheel between, you know, on the side of a building out on the horizon and stuff. And I was like, I wonder. And I'm getting all kinds of messages. Okay, they can wait. So if you've seen the movie, a lot of my ramblings make much more sense, but there's one thing in the movie I felt like was just kind of shoehorned in there. Maybe with another viewing, I could be all right with it, but the Joker gets arrested, and we have a moment there where it's very Watchmen-like, because the camera is right up against a television screen reporting the news of what the Joker had done on the Tonight Show, whatever they call it, right? And it pans back, and it's like Ozymandias' all his television sets. Yeah, towards the end of Watchmen, where he would sit there and take it all in. And we get to see the Joker walk up to the camera and say a few things after he shot Robert De Niro. And he gets tackled by security or somebody, and he's caught. He's in the cop car riding down the streets of Gotham. And all hell has broke loose. It even looks like hell. Anarchy is on the street. People are rioting. They're jumping up and down. They all have like these Halloween clown masks and everything. And as he's just sort of taking it in and watching it, out of nowhere, without you even suspecting it, a truck hits the cop car. And you're from the point of view of the wreck. And all the people get around, you know, a lot of the people riding come up, and it's in front of a movie theater. And they get him out, and like I said, they raise him up, and they bring him up there. And Joaquin Joker steps up, and he's looking at what all these people and what he's done, and his whole viewpoint of life was I was here to put smiles on people's faces. And that's where it's kind of messed up in this anarchy and total chaos and stuff. Everybody's got the clown mask on, so everybody has big smiles on. And he gets his bloodied mouth and he makes a big smile on his face with blood. Meanwhile, in the theater that he wrecked in front of, it shows on the marquee, it's got one of my favorite Brian De Palma movies ever, Blowout, with John Travolta. To me, that was his last great movie until Pulp Fiction. It has that movie, and it has Zorro the Gay Blade. So this is around 1981. And in the Batman mythos, Bruce, I've seen stories before where the night that Thomas and Martha Wayne were killed, it's because he wanted to see Zorro, the movie Zorro. And of course, where this is a period piece, they decided to show Zorro the Gay Blade. Not exactly the dramatic, that's a comedy, not exactly the adventure, hero of probably what a little kid would want to see and stuff. So those movies came out like in 1981. And as Thomas and Martha and little Bruce come out of the theater, they see the wreck and the riots and everything like that. And they pop down an alley. And some guy spots them because Thomas Wayne decided he was going to run for mayor and fix Gotham. The elite rich dude was going to help the poor people and the unfortunate and stuff, right? And this is where we see Thomas and Martha Wayne just get shot out of nowhere during all this riot and stuff. And he even reaches over there and rips the pearls off of Martha Wayne and throws them down at her. She lies there bleeding. And we have little Bruce Wayne standing there watching all this. I don't know if I agree with that scene being in there. I don't know. Okay, Creature, did you see the nod to Marvel at the beginning? I don't know. What was the nod to Marvel? I may have missed it. It was boring until the last 15 minutes. Reese Jameson. Oh, man. Well, see, there we go. I don't know. I just felt, I don't know. I really dug it. That's not a lot I can say about that if you thought it was boring until the last 15 minutes and stuff that it came up to and stuff. But I was just really into it. I could watch it again. That's the problem there. But I could get the movie being too quiet. I could get the idea of the movie. The movie started out very quiet, and it really showed you the character, and it really didn't give a crap if it bored you or not. I think. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's any moments there where I was took out of the movie, and I don't think I really was and stuff. Right? I was just kind of fascinated with trying to figure out if what I was seeing was real or not. Maybe I was watching it with a different lens of what I was looking for in the movie. So basically, like I said, going from what we had, 4.5 years ago with the Joker cover getting banned because of some ridiculous people, the same people went after this movie, tried to scare people not to go. Really got loud, if you will, to where it made the news. And I know local theaters were I know of one theater that was supposedly checking people's bags for guns before they walked in and stuff, to where, bam, this thing is a hit, breaking records and stuff. And to me, that's just like the coolest karma ever. Love being there. Nice. Okay. Right above his head at his makeup table, a sign says something about being marvelous. Oh, that's hilarious. Again, I want to watch the movie again to catch all that stuff. Gore Vidal. Actually, the scene reminded me of the film Being There, with Peter Sellers is watching all the television sets in a department store unrelated to the film, but yet another 70s classic film. And that's probably what they were going for. I bet you, considering that this was a period piece, I love that movie Being There. Absolutely loved it. And I still want to talk about how he walked on the water at the end of the movie. Very good observation, Gore Vidal. I never would have put that together or brought that up out of my head. I've watched that movie twice. I've seen that movie twice. I like to watch television. Yes. What is going on here? Oh, my computer has become unplugged. There we go. About lost everybody. I didn't go. I've had too many run-ins with guns. To me, that stuff was ridiculous. It really was. What they were trying to do to scare people from going to the movie. It was just ridiculous. There was a movie called The Warriors when I was a kid, where a lot of people was worried about going to the movie. A lot of places, cities were worried about showing that movie because of actual gang activity. I don't know of anybody who's really running around trying to be the Joker and stuff. And at one of the premieres of the movie, maybe in New York City, the movie Warriors got pulled because there was gang violence at the movies. Warriors was asking for it because they used actual gangs in the movie. So of course they're going to go to theater to watch it, and all those gangs were going to run into each other and stuff, right? That I get. There's real life elements in there, real life gang members in the movie and stuff. I don't know anybody that's going out here dressing like the Joker, doing all this stuff, or being inspired to. Okay, well that's it. That's my talk. It's one of those movies that I feel like every time I'm going to end up watching it, I'm going to find something else to talk about, which I think is perfect for the movie. Anybody got any thoughts here before we go ahead and just kind of close this here? Because I have some, I think I have a pot roast that I need to heat up there left over from last night. Nice. Okay, guys. Well, thanks a lot for hanging in there. There are many nods in the film. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I said, I picked up a couple of them here and talked about them in here. Yeah, John C. I got to go see it. Yeah, go see it. I'd see it during a matinee. Hey, thanks, Creature. Appreciate it, man. But I recommend Joker, man. Just realize that you go in there and like Mr. I think it was Reese here a minute ago. There is the possibility, depending on what you're expecting, you could be bored a little bit during it and stuff like that. But I think the quietness of the movie, it's a character-driven movie, and I think it just makes us question things and what's real and what's not. It kind of made it a game for me. Creature 1010 loved it. Thuggy, good man. Good seeing you too, man. Yeah, good to see you, Thuggy. I hope you're doing okay, man. Give me a yell sometimes. All right, guys. I will catch you later.